No discussion on contracting process improvements would be complete without a discussion on technology. In fact, there are entire sessions on contract management systems, on selecting them, on what to use them for, where they can benefit, and usually those are provided or delivered by various contracting management systems providers. First, we're going to start with taxonomy. As I mentioned before, the contract lifecycle management, CLM, it is a process. It is not a system, but so much of the legal press out there refers to CLM as a system, it confuses people. People think that you can buy a CLM. They're really trying to buy a CMS, which is a contract management system, or a CLM system. But taxonomy becomes important when you're out there shopping for things. So remember, contracting is a life cycle. It is a process. It is a series of activities and events, some of which are enabled with different types of technologies along the way. Sometimes there's a goal to enable the entire life cycle in a technology. So technology is important, and it's particularly important in one area, data. The best way to gather data insights is, of course, through automation, and that is one thing I would definitely recommend considering if you are really in a place where data insights are expected. Being a data-driven organization is a direction that the C-suite wants the law department to go, then it's probably time to invest in some contract management technologies, but being very particular about what it is you are trying to automate. Let's start with lesson number one is you have to optimize your people and your processes first. You have to create the policy, you have to review your process, you have to resource correctly, have templates, playbooks, and empowerment guides. All of the things we talked about until this point, that is all homework. Those all prerequisites before you should contemplate a contract management system. Once you are ready to contemplate getting a contract management system, be very clear on what it is you are trying to enable with technology. And I say enable very intentionally because technology enables processes, which is why you want to optimize your processes first, of course. But just looking at the life cycle itself, as you can see, there are so many different steps, and they have quite different players oftentimes, different stakeholders, different activities, and they have different needs for technology. In some cases, it's very obvious that automation can help. In other areas here, not so much. There are solutions that are trying to conquer the whole thing. But I think that it's very important to understand what it is you're trying to enable. Are you trying to enable better intake so that when the request comes in from your client or your business contact, that it has some basic information in it, and so that you can at least track how many of these have come in? Well, that's an intake form. I've seen those done on a regular Word document. Yes, that's low tech, but that's a first step, and you don't feel like you have to jump to technology. First, create the form. You're going to have to create those fields and understand them anyway if you try to automate. So first, create the form. You can also create those forms in some of the technologies that you might be using today, especially if you use the Microsoft Office suite, you have Office 365, or even if you're using the Google suite, there are certainly forms and capabilities that it has. Now, they're not designed for contract intake, of course. They're not designed for contract workflow or routing. That's where they fall short of some of the very specific contract-focused technologies. But my point here is an example of technology is great, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a contract management system that can accommodate this particular need. Similarly, on the other end of the spectrum with storage, we see a lot of legal departments that come for help to find the right contract management system, and we realize that the one problem they're really trying to tackle is storage. They don't have a great place to put their contracts, and they don't have an easy way to search for them once they're there. Well, again, contract management systems are designed for that, but starting first by creating a simple SharePoint site can be a first step. I am a big proponent of technology, but I'm a big proponent of right-sizing the technology and make sure that you don't overcommit or overbuy something that has so much cost and so much complexity that it becomes more of a burden than of a benefit. So when thinking about the contract management systems and assuming you've done all the right pre-work and kind of got things in order and organized before, I try to think about ways to categorize the contract management system so that I'm really focused on the problems that you're trying to solve and marry those with the best use cases of the various solutions out there. If I were to break down the different types of contracting related systems out there that I'm familiar with, and I'm familiar with a lot of them, there are those that offer a start to end solution. Everything from the request and the intake all the way through to post-signature obligation tracking. My only caveat with those are that they can't be good at every phase of this life cycle. They can't be investing in the technology equally on every phase. Usually they're better at some aspects than the other, and then your only job is to make sure that what they're best at are those features that you need because those are the top problems you're trying to solve. Always ask yourself, what problem am I trying to solve by looking at contract management systems? Typically, those that are quite good across the spectrum of the life cycle are also the more robust systems, which means they're going to have a longer implementation time. They're going to have a fairly complex implementation. They're going to be quite costly as well. They're probably very good for large enterprise implementations that need that sort of complexity and variations. Oftentimes they have customizations, which, by the way, all cost. But that's what I tend to see. There are lighter versions, too, of these kind of end-to-end lifecycle systems. Those are really great for smaller, more agile departments. They're also great for younger companies, perhaps, or companies that are comfortable creating strict rules and saying everyone must follow this process. When you're younger, it's easier to do that. Also, when you have the right company culture, it's easier to do that. So there are lighter systems that are easy to implement. They're definitely all SaaS, cloud-based systems, as they should be. They're the most agile, they're faster to implement, and they have some pretty good features along the entire life cycle. I will say one feature to not get overly excited about is anything around negotiation, where they're looking at exchanging documents online in their system. So it's not enabling the actual negotiation. We'll get to that technology in a minute. But this is where the system wants to offer a platform where then you can send to the third party, the outside of your organization, and then they have to enter the system to exchange drafts with you. The reason I caution against it is from a change management perspective. It's hard enough to change behavior within your own company. I would worry that you're trying to also change the behavior of professionals outside of your own company. And frankly, when it was done to me, I found it a little frustrating. And I would say, please just send it to me via email. Kind of the old-fashioned way, I would say. So that's something that I've not seen really take off across the industry, is this kind of a negotiation platform. Though a lot of solutions have it as a feature set, I just haven't really seen it used. That's my 2 cents on that. Now let's look at 2 other areas where contract management or contract-related systems are getting a lot of attention, and certainly a lot of investment from venture capital funds lately. One of them is contract review automation. And full disclosure, I'm also an advisor to a company called LawGeeks. They were kind of one of the first contract review automation providers. And they use artificial intelligence, as do the others that have now kind of popped up in the area. They use artificial intelligence to really bring your playbook to life, your negotiation guide to life. It's interesting in that it does enable the speed of negotiation to increase, because think of it as a really good first pass done by a robot, which means you're going to get accuracy and efficiency like you can never get with humans. That's a growing area. It's only going to get better and better, and there's some interesting opportunity, I would say, in that space. And the other one that is now becoming almost commonplace is contract term extraction, or contract analytics, it could be called. And that is using artificial intelligence to identify particular provisions in a contract regardless of what they're called. So it's a smart system. It's not simply a search, but it's really fantastic for large merger and acquisition types projects, for litigation matters where you have to look through high volumes of contracts and extract certain provisions. It's also great for compliance projects when you need to do a big look back when there's been a change in a regulatory requirement and you can't answer the simple question that the CFO asks. Hey, how many contracts say we have to do ABC? Well, you don't know that answer, so oftentimes these kind of solutions that are now quite common out there do a really good job at that, and they do it very quickly. So those are the two kind of areas that I see that are nuanced, that are growing in attention. Another area that's been around for some time now is clause library management and template creation. That's a little bit more of a general automation. It's not using artificial intelligence, which is in the other two areas really what makes them kind of top of mind for a lot of people. It's the latest and greatest technology. Template creation, though, has been around and is very useful when you have a nice decision tree that you can build into this kind of system that helps ask the right questions and then pops up kind of the clause that is relevant for the answer to that question. So it's also a nice enablement tool to use with the business when you're trying to empower the business. That's in the create part of the process. So that's a high-level view of how I see the different contracting types of systems out there. I will say it was the #1 legal tech investment area for 2020. An unusual year in general, but that certainly made it interesting from a legal tech investment perspective. There's been a significant rise in investment in legal tech over the last few years, really an unprecedented rise, and contracting seems to be the top area of focus right now. Interesting thing, of course, goes back to what I firmly believe is, of course, because contracts are the lifeline of every business, it's not surprising to me that there is this kind of investment. Contracts, well, some of us find them truly fun and exciting, but there's definitely a need for them, and there's a need to do them better, and that will only continue to increase in pressure as time goes on. So that is our little bit on contract management systems. This could probably be a course on its own. I help companies select systems. Each journey is different. Problems are different, but still the same. But the journeys are different. Getting buy-in, planning the change inside, doing the training, selecting the system, finding budgets. Everybody has their own journey. It's definitely an area to consider once you start down the optimization plan and start handling all of those prerequisites we mentioned before the technology. So, having painted that holistic picture of options and all the different aspects of improving contracting once and for all, let's take a look at a case study for a minute.